Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Adding and Subtracting Decimals, level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. Let's get started. Our learning targets today are I can identify keywords in word problems, and I can add and subtract decimals using a model in the standard algorithm. Go ahead and before we get started, rate yourself 1 through 5 on our learning targets. 1 is the least confident, 5 is the most confident. Go ahead and complete our opening, then come back to the video. In our opening, we can see that we have 2 boxes completely filled in. So the way we could write this is just 2, or you could also write it as 2.0 or 2.00, any of those work. Our next one, we have 2 out of 10 shaded. So if I were writing it as a fraction, I'd write it like this, 2/10. But it asks us to write it as a decimal, so I'll just put a 2 in the tenths place, and we are good there. Then on our last one, we have 2 out of 100 filled in. So the way we would write that is 0.02 with a 2 in the hundredths place. Let's take a look at our notes. Make sure you're writing with me. Our first step in adding and subtracting decimals is to line up your decimals and write them in evenly. A good rule of thumb is to space each number and have 1 pinky's worth of space between each number. You can see on our notes that we have a little example of spreading out our numbers and decimals evenly. Step number 2, write in a 0 placeholder if needed. You can see in this example, originally we were just adding 2, but to keep our decimals lined up, I added in 2 0 placeholders to make sure everything was super neat and organized. Our next step, step 3, is to add or subtract from right to left. So in our example, the first thing I did is I added 5 plus 5. Okay, so you start on the right-hand side, and we'll practice this in just a second. Then when you solve, you're going to bring the decimal straight down. And lastly, step 5 is to use estimation to ensure your answer is reasonable. So in this example right here, we had 2 plus 1.25 plus 1.05, and I rounded each number to the nearest whole number. So I got 2 plus 1, which is 4. That's an easier problem. And because my sum or my answer was 4.30, that tells me I'm on the right track. If I estimated and I got 400 as my original answer, that would be a red flag and let me know I need to go back and check my work. Let's talk about some keywords for addition. Keywords for addition are sum, make sure you're writing with me. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Sum, in all together, total, and increase. And these aren't the only words. These are just some of them. Let's zoom in on some subtraction keywords. And remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. Subtraction, difference is a huge keyword for subtraction. What's the difference between two numbers? Minus, decrease, subtract, and fewer than. And then lastly, spent. And similarly, these aren't the only keywords, but here are some of them. Let's take a look at our examples at the bottom of the page. Example A says shade in 1 plus 400ths. So we're going to go ahead and take our pencil, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but when we shade in our 1, we're going to shade in the entire box, 1 whole. And then we'll shade in 400ths. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So for 400ths, we're shading in 4 out of the 100 boxes. So just 1, 2, 3, 4. So it says then write it as the sum. I know sum is the answer to an addition problem. Well, we have 1 and 400ths. That is our sum. And we're going to practice this some more. You can always come back to this example if you need to. Let's look at example B. B says find the sum of 5 and 200ths and 7 and 5/10. That's just a period at the end. Sometimes that confuses people. So sum, let's underline that, the answer to an addition problem. You need to memorize that. And we'll write out 5 and 200ths, nice and neat, a pinky's worth of space between each number, plus 7 and 5/10. So sometimes I like to put in my decimal first because it really needs to be one decimal on top of the other. And then we can see we have a blank right here. In our notes, we talked about a zero placeholder. Whenever there's a blank, you'll just put a zero to keep it nice and organized. Now that my problem's super neat and lined up, I'm going to start on the right-hand side right here with 2 plus 0. So 2 plus 0 is 2. 0 plus 5 is 5. Bring down the decimal right beneath where it is. And 5 plus 7 is 12. We can use estimation to check our answer. So 5 and 200ths, I can round to 5, plus 7 and 5/10ths, I can round to 8, and 5 plus 8 is 13. So if I had $12.52, that is close to $13. So my estimation lets us know we're on the right track. Let's look at example C. Example C says, write the difference. Okay, I'm going to underline difference. I know that's a keyword for subtraction of 11 and 65/100ths and 8 and 71/100ths. Remember, this right here is just a period. So whenever we're subtracting, the order that the problem gives you the numbers is the order you need to write them. Okay, so 11.65 came first. So I'm going to super neatly write 11 and 65/100ths. We're subtracting minus 8 and 71/100ths. Make sure you're writing with me. We have nothing in this position, so if you want, you can add a 0 here. And we're going to start on the right-hand side. 5 minus 1 is 4. If I have $6, I can't buy something for $7. I don't have enough money, so I need to go ahead and borrow. I'm going to change the 1. It's going to go down one number, so it's going to become a 0. And then after we borrow, think about it like you get $10. Okay, so the 6 now becomes a 16. Now we can subtract. 16 minus 7 is 9. I'll neatly bring down my decimals. I cannot spend $8 if I have $0, so I need to borrow again. And remember, you earn $10 every time you borrow. So now I have 10 minus 8, which is 2. And 0 minus 0 is 0. So we got $2, or not $2, 2 and 94/100ths as our answer. And we can use estimation to make sure we're on the right track. 11 and 65/100ths, I can round that to 12, minus 8 and 71/100ths, I can round to 9, and 12 minus 9 is 3. If I had $2.94, that is close to $3. So estimation lets us know we're on the right track. Go ahead and complete the first and second problem on page 2, then come back to the video to check your work. For our first problem, you should have started by shading in 1400ths, then 2 holes. And if you didn't do them in that order, that's fine. It still reflects the same answer. Then it asks us to, in the second part of the directions, find the sum using the standard algorithm. So let's go ahead and check our work there. I'll zoom in. Make sure your decimals are super lined up and neat. Check your work. And then for our second problem, 3500ths plus 2500ths. Should have shaded in 3500ths and then another 25 boxes. Check your work for the standard algorithm. Make sure your decimals are super neat and lined up. Go ahead and complete the rest of page 2. Once you finish page 2, check in with your teacher to get feedback. On page 3, we're still practicing shading in with our models, but now we're practicing subtracting doing it. So it's a little bit different. But to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on our first number and we're going to shade that number. So we are going to shade in 1 and 5/10. So I'm going to shade in 1 whole, 5/10. Pause the video if you need more time. Once you've shaded in your first number, then you're going to cross out boxes for your second number. So we have 2/10. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So remember, each row is a 10th. So you could cross out each box for 20 boxes, or you could just cross out 2 columns. And then whatever you have left is your answer. But the directions also tell us to find the difference using the standard algorithm. So we're also going to do what we did on page 2, but we're subtracting now. 1 5/10 minus 2/10. And we get 1 3/10, which is what we have in our model 2. We have 1 and then 3/10 left over. Go ahead and practice only the next problem. Pause the video, then come back to the video to check your work. Go ahead and check your work for this second problem you just practiced on your own. Once you finish that, go ahead and complete the rest of page 3 on your own. This video will not go over that. Then check in with your teacher to get feedback. On page 4, you're going to solve using the standard algorithm and use estimation to check your answer. What I want you to do is complete C and D, pause the video, come back to the video to check your work for C and D. Check your work for problem C. Make sure that you put this 0 placeholder. Your decimals are super lined up. And don't forget that the directions said to use estimation to check your work. Check your work for problem D. Complete the rest of page 4, then check in with your teacher to get feedback. On page 5, you're going to underline keywords, solve using the standard algorithm, and then don't forget to use estimation to check your answer. To make sure you're on the right track, complete problems A and B, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem A and make sure you followed all the directions. You should have underlined keywords. So I underlined the word total. That's a keyword for addition. This time we had 3 numbers that we were adding. So I really want you to pay close attention and make sure that your decimals are totally lined up and that you inserted our 0 placeholders for 14. If you didn't, go ahead and fix that. Okay, so we have our keywords, standard algorithm, and then the last part of the directions were to estimate to check your work. So make sure you included that part. Once you're done checking your work, let's take a look at problem B. Check your work for problem B. Once you're finished checking your work, complete the rest of page 5, then check in with your teacher to get feedback. Come back to the video when you're ready for page 6. Complete all of page 6, then come back to the video. Let's check our work for the common misconception problem. For this answer, you should have gotten that Monica solved the problem correctly. Austin put the 0 placeholders in the wrong position. The 0 should come after the decimal. If Austin used estimation to check his work, he would see that his answer was way off. Let's check our work for the closing problem. I'm not going to check the explain problem, but I do want you to check that you got this part correct, finding the difference. So I'll zoom in, check your work. Don't forget to answer this problem right here. This video will not go over it. And to close out today, make sure you fill in our debrief questions. In your own words, what did you learn today? How much effort did you put in during class? Rate yourself 1 through 5. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. And then what do you think is a common misconception a student might make when adding and subtracting decimals? Once you're finished answering all of the questions on page 6, go back to page 1, and we're going to rate ourselves on our learning targets after the lesson now that we've gotten some more practice. So at the start of this lesson, we rated ourselves 1 through 5. Now you'll rate yourself after the lesson. And don't forget to get your teacher initials to get feedback. Thank you for joining us today at Middle Math Academy, where we practiced adding and subtracting decimals level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. If you're looking for any additional practice, make sure to check out levels 1, 3, 4, or 5. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.